Welcome to the World of Rare Disease, a show that focuses on awareness and education about rare and complex disorders. My name is Lisa Deck, and I am a Rare New England Committee member and your host for today's show. Today, our show features Mary Mahon Mccauley, the recently appointed director of the Massachusetts Office of Disability. Prior to this role, Mary served at the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission since 1989, most recently as its area director for downtown Boston. Mary has a distinguished career helping and serving hundreds of people, and she was honored in 2008 with the Thomas J. Carroll Award for Employment as the Blind Employee of the Year for demonstrating the highest degree of excellence. We are thrilled to welcome you to our show, Mary.
Thank you very much.
So let's start from the beginning. We want to talk a little bit about you, and we want to talk about how did your career begin?
Going back to my bachelor's degree, I went to school for sociology. My major was sociology. And I think at that time, even at 18, 19 years old, I knew I wanted to work with people, but not really sure in what capacity. And when I finished school, went on to, when I finished college, I was helped by the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, and which was interesting, with the Vocational Rehabilitation Unit, which I later worked for many, many years with their sister agency, Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. And there was a major hiring event with the Internal Revenue Service, and I had a sociology degree, and they were looking for college graduates that had customer service skills.
Okay.
So I went for the interview, not really wanting to work for the IRS, but actually got the job and stayed there about 4 years. And all of the time knowing that that was the area for me as far as interacting with people, that I wanted to work within social or human services. And I went to, one day I walked up the hill to Suffolk University behind the State House and paid for a graduate class with a credit card.
Great.
And began graduate school, transferred to UMass Boston, and worked on a Master's of Education in Counseling, Rehabilitation Counseling. And back at that time, there was a civil service tests.
Right.
And I had taken the civil service test and started to get calls from different offices, and the Quincy Mass Rehab Commission called me. And so May of 1989, I started as a vocational rehabilitation counselor and loved the field.
Okay.
You know, worked with people with disabilities specifically to the goal of employment.
Right.
But towards employment was self-sufficiency and empowerment, and it's been a great field for me, and it's been always, you know, really working with people since my master's degrees with disability.
Right.
And, you know, and before that, prior to that, being truly an advocate for people with disabilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a perfect combination of working with people and really making a difference and helping empower them.
Yes.
So that feeling is what has led you here today to now be the director of the Commission of Disability.
Absolutely.
Which is excellent. So while you do not have a rare disease, our show is about rare diseases.
Right.
However, you do have a disability, and I think that there are a lot of similarities. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your personal history with disability.
Sure. I actually went to a parochial school in probably 4th grade. They had, you know, every year they would have a vision test and hearing test. And in 4th grade, I did not do well on the vision test, and I had a note and went home to my mother and father to tell them that I had to go, you know, to see an eye doctor. So that was the first thing. And even though possibly, as I know at this point, I had some vision problems, you know, at 5, 6, 7, 8, I didn't know. I mean, how do you know what good vision, you know, it wasn't that poor, so it wasn't noticeable to me or
Right.
others.
Well, I think in that situation, too, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So you didn't know that what you
Right.
weren't seeing was different.
Right.
Right.
And I was just
Yeah.
a child, and you don't know to tell someone, and
Right.
it wasn't noticeable from the outside. It was truly pretty hidden at that point. So I started to go to, I went to the first doctor who was very discouraging and said, you know, that he just thought I wanted to wear glasses because my friends did, which my 9-year-old mind translated into calling me a liar.
Right, right.
You know, as a kid, and I think the history of it, of what happened between then, age 9 and age 17, there is a lot of commonalities, I believe, with rare diseases, because I then went forward to specialists all over, first Quincy, Massachusetts, South Shore, and then all over Boston. And I went to hospitals all over Boston. I was seen by ophthalmologists and optometrists, psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, neuropsychologists.
Right.
I was seen by a lot of people at many hospitals. And I was diagnosed with one thing at 10 and then another thing at 13, but they weren't sure. At 15, I was told that I had an eye disease and I would be totally blind within 5 years.
Wow.
So that was what I thought was accurate and true for 2 years, from age 15 to 17. I was finally diagnosed properly at 17. So it was about 8 years of misdiagnosis. And some of it being that the medical community was clearly not as advanced as they are now with testing. And there were several reasons. And some of them along the way, and I think this is probably true for a lot of people that are involved with Rare New England, quite a few of the doctors along the way, although maybe experts in their field and in the research, do not necessarily have a good bedside manner. And so I met a lot of those on the way, which is probably a little tougher when you're 14, 15, 16 years old,
Right.
than as an adult. So at 17, I was properly diagnosed finally with primary macular degeneration with peripheral cone involvement, which is kind of under the Stargardt's family umbrella. And I was crossed over from poor sight or visually impaired to legal blindness at age 17.
Okay.
So in a lot of the things that came with that are probably commonalities with the population of individuals with rare diseases. It felt pretty rare to us, even
Right.
though it may not be statistically. It felt rare. And my mother, we didn't know, what is this? Where's it coming from? Because for 9 years, they couldn't figure it out.
Right. Interestingly, in the rare disease community, we often call that a diagnostic odyssey. Really,
Yes.
that
Yep.
we're hoping to know what it is and we don't. And I know as a patient, I've had a very long one as well. And I think you touched upon a lot of those social feelings and emotional feelings
Yep.
that come from that, is, being not believed or feeling alone,
Yes.
a lot of those things. And I know, in my personal opinion, I find myself helping others so they don't have to deal with that same thing that I dealt with.
Yes.
And I'm thinking I see that in you in
Yeah.
terms of even where your career took you.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that all played a part of where you are today.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think that, looking back at myself as a young person, there was the, not being believed, not being validated. I was actually told, and I kind of skipped over some of the diagnoses, but at 12 years old, I was told that it was a psychiatric disorder,
Right.
that it was psychosomatic, that I was going through some difficulties with family issues at my home. My parents were getting divorced and so on and so forth. And as I got through puberty, I'd be able to see better.
Wow.
So that
Yeah.
was, on my
Right.
mind, going to sleep every night as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. And, clearly that was incorrect. I'm
Right.
far beyond
Right, right.
those years.
Absolutely.
But that was, at the time, this was a diagnosis that was given as like a final diagnosis. And you'd live with 1 or 2 years with that in your mind.
Right.
So,
right.
that I remember thinking, you just have to relax and calm down. And I wasn't a specifically anxious person or anything. So,
Right.
but yeah, that was tough. And I absolutely think there's a connection from where I ended up. When I first went to grad school for counseling, I wasn't necessarily thinking of rehabilitation counseling, but fell into that. And it's really been, it's been exciting for me, because for someone that was in complete denial that I had any vision problem at all, for many years to the point of just faking it everywhere and you know, being embarrassed by it and feeling less than and those internalizing feelings of less self-worth and self-esteem, and then being able to come through more of acceptance through my own journey, you know, through a lot of different things, and then professionally being in a field and being able to give back. It's what keeps me going and gets me up every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're surely doing that. You know, you actually covered a couple of the questions we had talked about was, you know, do you see your disability as a benefit or a challenge or both?
I would say both. It's definitely a challenge. I mean, you know, some individuals that are blind refer to it as, you know, some people have blonde hair, some people are blind. I think it's a little more than that as far as how I think of it. It causes challenges, but the challenges can absolutely be overcome. They can be overcome with attitude, with technology, with support. I would say those are the three most important factors, really.
Right.
Feeling less challenged and more empowered, really.
Right.
You know, to me now, within my professional life, and actually in my personal life, really all the way around, it's an asset. It really is an asset. I have a lot of empathy, and partly because I understand and I've been there.
Right.
You know, for 17 years, other than my vocational rehab job, I ran a support group for Massachusetts Association for the Blind. And as you were speaking earlier, there were a lot of people that were newly blinded or visually impaired. And, you know, that news at first was very devastating to them and very difficult to hear. And, you know, we would share information and support and resources and, you know, so I was able to be on that side of it, which of course at the same time, it's helping me. I'm working and meeting more people that are, you know, similarly visually impaired as I am, and it's just, it's great. I think meetings with peers in any type of support group situation is, I am such a strong advocate for.
Right. And hearing you talk, I think not only are you bringing resources and education, but you're bringing hope to them because you're also, they can look at you and say, she has a career, she's making a difference, and that's what I want to do. So talk to me a little bit about you've had a long career, of a very distinguished career, but what are some of your favorite initiatives you've worked on over the years?
You know, that's a tough question. It's been 31 years now that I've worked in the field of disabilities, you know, and there's been a lot of events and individual experiences. So, you know, as I was thinking through things, preparing for this interview, I thought that one area, and it's not a specific event or initiative that I began, but it's something that is like globally over the ideas around the initiative. What I truly appreciate and feel is so worthwhile is when I'm working with individuals, you know, other individuals, it's to really promote independence and self-worth and esteem and empowerment for individuals with disabilities. And I'm working with people, and there's like this inspirational energy that gets fueled from that.
Right.
And you know that there's people that are feeling better about themselves that day than they might have the day before, or they're moving towards becoming more hopeful and realizing that they're a full person. So I think in any aspect of my job when I've done that, which is a lot of individual counseling through the years, but then I had the opportunity to be a supervisor, job placement specialist, and then a director in my last office. So, you know, and now being the executive director at MOD, I have a further reach. So some of the, you know, one initiative I think of that I think back to was something within the city of Quincy that we did years ago, and it was a 50th anniversary of my previous employer, Mass Rehab Commission, and we had a huge career fair, and it was a private, public, private nonprofit partnership. So we had private companies involved, and it was a real awareness event, and people with disabilities applying for jobs, and it was really exciting. And as I came into this position in September, I walked in the beginning of September, and I have a great staff, I have to say, and they were planning on the Disability Summit, which was on September 27th.
Excellent.
And that was a fantastic event. There were a lot of people with, leaders in the disability community, people with disabilities, people from municipalities, and a lot of it had to do with access and equal footing, equal access for individuals, whether it was physical or communication access. So it was, that was a great initiative, which I was able to come in and stand up there and say I'm new director, but it was really the entire staff, the other 12 that really put that all together.
Right.
They may have asked me a few of the final touching points, but that's when I realized, and I do have a great staff. This new appointment it's quite an honor to have been appointed to this position.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you here. And my last question, well, actually I have two more questions. One, can you just tell me a little bit about what is rehabilitation counseling? This was not on your script. I just want to know,
that's okay.
and I'm thinking if other people are listening, they might want to know too.
Sure. Vocational rehabilitation counseling is a service that's offered to people all over the United States. Every state in the country has an agency, either one or two within their state, that offers vocational rehabilitation counseling. And it is for individuals with disabilities, and sometimes it varies on the different states of what the severity of the disability is, of whether you would be able to get services. So it's absolutely worth checking out. Some of the states have commissions for the blind, and others just have one vocational rehab. We happen to have both agencies. And VR, or Voc Rehab, works with individuals with disabilities towards the goal of employment.
Okay.
So they do career counseling, vocational counseling, oftentimes helping to pay for some training, maybe licensing. It's guidance counseling. It's all free. The counseling piece of it is all free. The services and the groups they might put on in the offices are all free. And then depending on your income, they may be able to pay for uniforms or tools or a lot of things, all towards the goal of work.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what I was assuming, but I like the explanation. I think our viewers would like to hear that as well.
Yeah, and there are agencies all over.
Right.
Voc Rehab offices under Mass Rehab Commission all over the state.
Okay, so all over the state,
And
it's
Mass
all over
Commission for the Blind. All over the
Okay,
state.
and it's all over the country.
Correct.
So that's great to know, because
Yes.
I think sometimes when you're newly diagnosed, you don't even know what is out there for you. And I
Exactly.
think that's what we're trying to do, is
Right.
bring these resources
Yes.
to our viewers.
Yeah.
And finally, and you've touched a lot about this, but if you had a couple minutes just to say to somebody, you're suddenly disabled and you still want to pursue your goals, what advice would you give?
There's always a period of grief, and it's okay. And that's really important, because people aren't going to find out, they're not going to hear a diagnosis or find out, have new information, or be really ill and go right to hope and, let me go forward, I can do it. You have to feel your feelings. I mean, that's part of what I would say. But through that, and let me just back up a little, just because I've shared this a lot publicly now. I'm also in recovery from alcoholism and drugs, and I've been sober since I was 24.
Wow.
And a lot of my reaction, even though I think I would have been an alcoholic, I would be an alcoholic even if I did not have an eye disease, but it helped fuel the fire, pick it up a little.
Right.
So, I think a piece of things with me was jumping into that, the alcohol and drugs, and which was a pretty super negative way of handling situation. And luckily, at a young age, in early 20s, I got sober, and so through that, I continued to move forward and be hopeful, and I kept moving forward, not without difficulty, but with people, support, education. I've been really fortunate to continue to move, and so I would also tell people that the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. It's really keep moving forward. I'm someone that I'm not competing against other people. I compete against myself.
Right.
And I think even if you have, if you're incapacitated for a lot of the time and really feel I'm not able to do this or that, there's always things that can be done. Maybe you can, continue to do your writing that you've been doing. If you're, maybe you continue to look forward at some part-time training moving towards a goal. But goals are important, and hope and support in moving forward with people that care about you. It's just critical.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing today.
You're welcome.
Before closing, we provide our viewers with an opportunity to share comments or ask questions from our prior shows. Rare New England in Motion is the perfect way to expand upon our mission of engaging with our community. Please send us any questions or comments you might have to info@rarenewengland.org. We will share your responses on our next show. From our last show, we received a question about the rare disease bill that is in play in Massachusetts. We are happy to share that the bill to create a Rare Disease Advisory Council in Massachusetts has been passed favorably out of the Public Health Committee and sent on to healthcare financing. We are working hard to keep this bill moving and get it passed this session. If you have a question for Rare in Motion, please send us an email. Thank you for your inquiry. That's our show for today. Thank you again so much to Mary for being here.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. And from all of us at Rare New England and all the patients and families who keep rare disease in motion, thank you for watching. And remember, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, then think zebras. Thank you.